Mr Speaker, and I commend it to the House.
I call Dennis O'Rourke. It may pay. Yes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. First of all, I'd like to say that I felt that Nicky Wagner's claim that the majority of Canterburyans would support this bill was utterly baseless poppycock. Nobody can possibly know who would vote which way on that issue. I can say this, that nobody I have spoken to, and I have lived in Canterbury all my life, would support this bill. Nobody I have spoken to would do so, so I'm convinced as a resident that this bill is not supported by them. It does two things. It extends the Commissioner's special water management powers and delays the date, as we know, for an elected ECAN to 2016. New Zealand First firmly opposes the Environment Canterbury Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Amendment Bill. Having said that, I would have to say that I was relieved when in 2010 the government removed the elected ECAN Council and replaced them with commissioners. Many people in Canterbury at that time felt the same. I was then and still am the chair of the Central Plains Water Trust, which holds the consents for the Central Plains Water Scheme. Then, at that time, great concern was held about the irrational behaviour of ECAN on some irrigation issues. ECAN elected council itself was very hostile to all irrigation development, driven by public and political perceptions about irrigated farming, rather than robust policy and planning. Central Plains was and is about sustainable farming, not about first-generation old-style irrigation. Central Plains developed a sustainable farming protocol and supporting contractual arrangements, a first for New Zealand on this, and demonstrated a genuine commitment to environmentally sustainable agriculture in that way. The Christchurch City Council and the Selwyn District Council established the trust to ensure that Central Plains water was always a community scheme with no alienable water rights, and resource consents would be held in trust permanently. ECAN in 2010 was virtually impossible to deal with. It had unreasonable political hostility towards irrigators and farmers, not good government, and it exacerbated the town versus country divide for purely political ends. It had developed a them and us mentality, so that Central Plains Water and other irrigators were treated as enemies, whereas Central Plains Water wished to collaborate. This also extended to ECAN management, which in fact sought to change plans even while Central Plains Water's RMA process was still being finalised, and they always failed to genuinely consult on those issues. ECAN has always had a poor attitude to water issues. Early in the 1990s, when I was a city councillor in Christchurch, I know from attempted meetings with them that they would refuse to collaborate with the City Council on water issues. They then complained about insufficient resources, and its actions by 2010 were then 10 years too late and badly formulated. In the meantime, during those 10 years, the City Council and Selwyn District Council got together and had to act alone without ECAN to set up Central Plains Water and make its own plans on water issues, with a genuine attempt to balance the need for economic development based on irrigation and economic development of the Central Plains with environmental sustainability. The best hope now for a consensus is the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, and that especially now concerns storage issues. ECAN wasted time during the previous years on impossibly impractical proposals like in-ground storage, and it needed a balanced collaborative approach, not a dictatorial one, to establish achievable environmental standards, especially, for example, on nitrate levels. The commissioners have done that, and their job is substantially done. I note that in the Bill's policy statement, it says, and I quote, "In order to enable the commissioners to adopt a second-generation land and water plan and other plans, and to fully implement the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, the commissioners will continue to be provided with additional resource management powers," and so on. Now, does that mean, if they're going to be around to fully implement it, that they're going to have to be there for the next 20 years, because that's how long it will take to fully implement it? Does that mean that 2016 is not actually the date where we will get an elected ECAN? Is it actually going to be some further extended date in the future? Now, Mr. Speaker, while the original decision to insert the commissioners was necessary for the reasons I gave, that never meant I thought it was right or ever would be right to delay the elected council's reinstatement beyond 2013. The commissioners themselves say this, and I know that by private conversations with some of them. The decision to add another 3 years until 2016 for the election of a new regional council is unnecessary. Everything the commissioners needed to do has been sufficiently done, and the decision is unhelpful. The strategy now needs community buy-in and active support, and that requires at least a majority of ECAN to be elected. And the decision is an affront to democracy. Along with Sarah and the CCDU, there is altogether too much central government in Canterbury and not enough community governance. Community representation may be inconvenient for a national government, but there is a real sense of loss and grievance by Canterbury people over their loss of adequate say in local governance. Mr. Speaker, perception now is of government manipulation in Canterbury for its own ends, perhaps with a secret agenda. Commissioners are perceived as tools of central government, not representatives of the community. And government is perceived as having commercial imperatives through its shareholding and trust power, with its Rakaia and Lake Coleridge interests in power generation and ostensibly for supply of water for irrigation schemes. So what should the government do now? First of all, it should stick to its promise, broken by this bill, to hold elections for ECAN in 2013, immediately identifying top options for a new ECAN and not wait until next year to do so. They should be asking whether ECAN should be fully elected, part elected, or part appointed, whether the old ECAN as it was should be reinstated, and in fact whether there should be a unitary council or unitary councils in Canterbury. Those are the things it should have been doing last year, and they should be well advanced by now, so that Cantabrians would actually decide what should happen to local government and in particular to ECAN in the future. Mr. Speaker, finally, local government arrangements must be the people's choice and not the government's choice. Water management issues must no longer be a political football for the main parties. National has broken its promise, and it should now reverse that and allow elections for ECAN this year, along with all other local government organisations.
I call Jackie Dean.